Hey, what's up guys? It's Mixed by 8i, mixed by 8i.vision. And today I want to share a concept with you that is very near and dear to my heart. What you're looking at before me is my actual mixer setup, okay? I'm letting it all out of the bag. This is exactly what I see every session that I set up. You'll notice I have my beats. I have my tracks for my 2-track beats. I have some lead vocal buses, and we'll talk about that. I have effects. And I have some buses to where I can bounce those out and send separately. Now, I'm not going to get into the effects or nothing like that because that's not what this video is about. From the title, you'll see that the concept here that I want to express to you is how to set up or create your DAW template. Now, why would you want a template? First off, you're going to eliminate the tedious setup. You see this setup here? It would take me unnecessary time to set this up. Okay, so if you find yourself using the same processing when you're recording, when you're mixing, when you're making beats, you use the same effects, anything like that, you might want to start looking into setting up a template. The second reason why you would want to set up a template would be for consistency. If you're starting to work on larger projects, if you're an artist and you're recording on larger projects, or you're mixing for a client or for yourself, and you have an EP or an album that you want to release or a mixtape that you want to release, you want to have that consistency. This helps you create a consistent sound. You know that you're going to have the same reverb, same processing, or pretty much the same tone and vibe of the project that you're working on. The last reason you'd want to get into this is to basically create your sound. I have a couple of effects that turns my DAW into basically an analog console, more specifically the SSL console. If you want to learn more about the analog console concept, I have a video called the console concept, which is treating your DAW like a console, and that's basically all I do here. So I'm pretty much creating the sound and crafting the sound before any processing, before any effects, or before any tracks come into this session. I already know what the end result is going to sound like. Now, in saying that, does that mean that you have to does that mean that I'm using all of these effects every single time? No, but it does mean that when it's needed, it's there. And that's the beauty of having a template. And today I'm going to teach you how to set up just a fairly simple one. So right out of the gate, if we create a new session, I promise you, if you learn how to do this in your DAW, it's the same thing. Okay, so you can follow along in whatever software you're using, but I'm just going to unclick the create from template. That gives us a blank session. And I'm just going to name this mix template. So you don't have to worry about these settings. These are just things to reset what I'm doing so that I can show you right away. Okay, so it's going to ask me to save. There's nothing here, so I don't have to save anything. But if you open your DAW and you create an empty session, you'll notice that you don't have anything. So we don't have any tracks, with the exception of this click track, which is something they started adding earlier in life. So we don't need that. But essentially, you have a blank session. All right. From here, especially in Pro Tools, you can pretty much set up your session any way that you want to. And it goes beyond just setting up tracks. For example, I like to look at not only the bars, but I also measure the time. So I'm able to have a sub counter. You might just have this one measure here, but if you go to show sub counter, you're able to see two different things, and I just set it to minutes and seconds. All right, so let's get started. What all would we need for a recording or a mixing template? So for starters, we need a track to record our vocals on. And I like to use one specific track to record my vocals, and I call this the record track. So it's a mono audio track. you know, it says measured in samples. You don't have to worry about that. But I just name it to record. Then I add another track. I actually add 3 more tracks. Those 3 tracks are going to be reserved for my lead vocals. So I like to call them LDs, but you can just go with lead or lead vocal or lead vox, right? Then from there, we got 4 mono audio tracks that we're going to call our background vocals. Maybe you have some ad libs. Maybe you have some actual background vocals. Maybe you have some dubs. This is just a starting point. Okay, so if you need more, definitely add more. If you call them something else, definitely add this to your liking. This is just a sample template. Okay, so from there, we need the beat, right? So I like to add a beat. Sometimes we're working with a stereo track, a 2-track beat, right? Something we imported from YouTube. Ain't no shame. I create 1 stereo audio track and I just name it beat. Last but not least, we need what's called, well, not last but not least, we need a stereo master track so that we can monitor all of our levels. And that's all we're using the master for. Then we have what I like to call a reference track. So this is a track that you import that sounds like your song. So this could be a song of yours or a rough draft of something you recorded and you just want to hear it so you can make it a final draft. This can be a commercially released song. Just anything that helps you get into the groove is what I like to call a reference track. So I like to import those in to help me mix. So I just call it ref. And that's pretty much it. And that's also a stereo audio track, by the way. All right. So we have 1 track for recording, 3 lead vocals, 4 background vocals, 1 stereo beat, 1 stereo master, and 1 reference track for our references. And when we hit OK, that comes up for us. And that's it. That's your setup. Okay. So all we'd have to do is arm this track to record. And once we record, and I quick punch in, once we record, and it's not going to record, it's recording, but it's muted because there's a bit of a latency. Okay. So once we record, we get that take, we can move it. Okay. And then we start recording. Uh-oh, I forgot. Let's mute that. Okay. So we can start recording and, we can now have another take. Bam. And now we're moving along the mix. Okay. So this template helps you set that up. All right. So you don't have to keep going through every single track, arming it to record and forget to record it and forget to disable the previous track. And now you got 2 recorded tracks wondering why your vocals are loud. So this just helps you. Just that alone should be a part of your template. All right. And then for our beat, all we have to do is import it in. Okay. And everything is routed to the master. So we have a final output to gauge it. Okay. You may want to add effects. At this point of the recording, all I would do is pretty much add some form of EQ, which in this case, we'll use the EQ 7 band. And I just like to do a high pass filter. And I'll do maybe 12 to 18, so it's not sounding phasey. And I go to about 80, okay? And I'm not worried about the numbers. Another thing I like to do is when I'm recording is just boost the top end. So I do a shelf at maybe 8,000 hertz, okay? Uh-oh, I don't know why it does that. 8K hertz. I'm trying to do 8K hertz, but yeah, give or take. So I like to do a little boost there, and that's a high shelf. Then I do a compressor. I do some form of compressor. We're going to do the Dyne 3. And from there, all I do is basically get maybe about 2 dB of gain reduction. Now, we're not printing, and that's the beauty of recording into these effects. We're not printing these, and we can always change this. But what happens is once we move from here, we pretty much lose that effect. So this is not being printed as you're recorded. You're only monitoring through these plugins. So in order to keep that same sound, you would have to copy everything over, and that's just tedious. And of course, you can set up your template to have these effects on there. But I wouldn't recommend this when you're recording because one, this is going to have more CPU usage, and I'm using the stock plugin, so we're not getting as much CPU usage, but you don't want to go into that practice. So an easy way to get the sound that we're looking for is to start setting up our buses. And this is especially helpful when you start getting into mixing. I like to create buses for each section of my tracks. So for our lead vocals, and all a bus is basically we're taking the output of these tracks and routing it to one specific track. Okay, so we're sending the entire signal to another track for processing. So we can send all 3 tracks to one specific track, namely our lead vocal bus, and we can process all 3 vocals from there. So in Pro Tools, the way that you would do this is you would highlight all of the tracks that you want to go to the bus, and we don't have a bus set up, but what we can do is once we have everything highlighted, we hold both Shift and Alt, then we click the output of the track. I like to route out to a new track. That's a new track that we're going to set up. And what happens is automatically we create a stereo aux input. Okay, and that's pretty much what's going to be the bus. So the bus is an aux input. Okay, and I'm going to unclick this create next to current track, but we're just going to name this bus LV for lead vocals. And so what happens is all of our lead vocals are routed out, as I said, into this specific bus for processing. And we're going to solo safe it. If you have the newer version of Pro Tools, this happens automatically. I bought my version of Pro Tools about 4 years ago, so I just don't see the need to upgrade to the newest one just for that feature or just for the new features. So it's pretty much the same thing. We can use the same plugins on this lead vocal bus. To do that, I hit Alt or Option, I click and I drag the plugin all the way to the lead vocal bus. And so now all 3 tracks have that have those plugins, those 2 plugins that work on those. Okay, so that's pretty much what's happening there. We can do the same thing for our background vocals. So we're just gonna create a track and call it BV. Okay, so everything is routed there, and we can pretty much do the same thing. So all of our lead vocals have the effects, and all of our background vocals have the effects. Okay, so with our beat, we're routing it out to the master. Sometimes your beat comes in a little bit too hot, so in that case you would want to turn it down. Otherwise you'd be turning up your microphone input, and I'll have a video on why you shouldn't do that. Okay, so we want the trim plugin or use any type of gain plugin coming in. Otherwise you can do this. You can turn down the volume on the fader to about 10 decibels. And that's pretty much what you would need just to get that headroom, okay? But I like to use a trim plugin because if I want to do some processing on the 2-track beat, I'm not processing that loudness, okay? So I'm not decreasing that headroom. All right, so I'm just going to turn this down by 10 decibels. And this can pretty much be your setup. This is all you would need to record into your setup. So if you start getting into mixing, you would do the same thing. Let's add a reverb and delay. Okay, so I'm going to come out of this. I'm going to click this beat track, and I'm just going to create some more aux tracks after the beat, right? So that's going to be, go to track, create a new, and we're going to create 2 new stereo aux tracks. Okay. And we'll leave that as is because we can rename them here. We'll just call this reverb, and we'll call this delay. All right, and solo safe. Always solo safe your aux tracks. So now we're going to create our reverb and delays as reverb sends. So what's the difference between a send and a bus? Well, a send, we're going to go to this lead vocal track and we're going to send the reverb. So we're basically sending a copy of the signal as opposed to the original signal. So this gets processed and then we send a copy of that in parallel to the reverb bus or the reverb send. And all we do is just add a simple reverb. So I like to, we can add the deverb. I've used this plugin for years, but we want 100% wet because we're sending a copy in parallel. So from there, we can choose how much of the copy we want to send to the reverb. Okay. Then we do the same thing with the delay. We send 100% or 0 dB or unity. So we're sending 100% to the delay, 100% of the copy. And we just add a delay plugin, stock delay plugin. Okay. A bus, this is pretty much all you would need for your setup. All right. Just to start off, this is a template that you can use just to start off. Okay. So you can choose how much reverb you want to send, how much of that signal you want to send to reverb, how much of that signal you want to send to delay. Just a quick note, you can throw these effects on the track itself. However, I just like to have a little bit more control. When we use our sends, we're able to control that reverb just a little bit more as opposed to having it on the track and you have to deal with the settings that come with it. So it's just that extra bit of professionalism that you can use, but you can definitely, you don't have to set up a reverb and delay itself. You can definitely use this on the track. This is a pretty much cut and dry template. Okay, it has all of your basic essentials. And if you want to take it a step further, like I said, check out my console concept video. So let's talk about mixed bus processing. So I have a video on mixed bus processing, but from here you can set up your mix bus. Okay, if you're recording, you can basically skip this step if you want to. But for a simple mix bus, I just like to simply cut at 20, maybe cut down at 16,000 hertz. And we're doing a very gentle, we're doing a pretty much gentle roll off there. Some compression. All right. And we don't do much. Just slow attack, fast release. Okay. Maybe add some saturation. And this is the sound that you gauge beforehand, before processing. So you would want to do this. So you already have sort of going into your sound. I'm going to use the lo-fi plugin because it has that saturation knob on it and we don't need much of that. And you don't even have to have these on. As a matter of fact, we can make these inactive so that they're there for when you need them. You don't need this reverb right away. Okay, so we can bypass all of this stuff. You may not need this EQ right away. It'll help you load it faster too. So that's pretty much it. We have a basic template set up just for us to record and even probably go into mixing. So it just eliminates a lot of the technical process so you're able to focus on being more creative. So if you can get at least 80% of the mix or the recording setup done, all you have to do is just come in and start recording. All you'd have to do is just import your tracks and start mixing. Okay. So with that said, let's talk about how to save this. Now in Pro Tools, and your DAW is going to be different. In Pro Tools, you have the save as template section. You can just simply name your template, and we named it mix template. I don't want to save this. but I will give you this template, and all you'd have to do is do this, hit save as template, name it whatever you're going to name it, and then press OK. Okay, that's all you'd have to do. All right. And so how to bring it up is when you go to create a new session, you hit the create from template first, find where your template is. So my template would be in my Izzy templates. All right. And then you'd click your template, and then from there you can name your session to whatever the song is. And every time you press create, it's going to load up exactly as you saved it. And every single time you're going to just get the same results. You're going to get the same setup. Okay. So I encourage you, one, check out my console concept video so you can take this idea a little bit further. It actually comes with that free template as well. And two, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, as I got new videos coming out every single Friday. Number three, this is also a part of my 7 concepts of efficient mixing workflow, which is also a free guide that you get just for watching this video. Just for stopping by, I want to give you these 3 free gifts just for stopping by. Yeah, so to grab all of that, the link is in the description below. I really appreciate you for watching this video, and until next time, peace.